Welcome. Today's a fun day as we take a look. Of course, it's a special time of year. And today is a day where we're going to take a look at some of the biggest NCAA March Madness upsets in history. Because I don't know about you, but when I'm in this time of year, I think about games I recall, whether they be from recent years or whether they be from my childhood, and a lot of times that's what it is. I can remember those big games where I either stayed home or then I ran home from school or whatever the case might have been and saw the biggest upset that just took place. And so today we're going to talk about some of them. We're going to talk about the big moments that were shocks and surprises for all of us in March Madness. So welcome. I hope you've subscribed to the program, and let's take a look. Let's get right to it and take a look at what brought about this discussion. Obviously, March is a great month. And if you take a look, this is what was on Twitter. Or actually, I shouldn't call it Twitter. It's actually X, obviously. But if you look at the biggest March Madness upset ever, you can see a couple of the top posts were from 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And you can see that Jimmy here said the biggest upset was 2012 when Norfolk State beat Missouri. I think he might be onto something. Then you see the second post was where the number 16, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, pulled off the upset. The greatest upset, it says, as they defeated Virginia. That was incredible. But these are just some of the thoughts that some people have. Middle Tennessee State over Michigan State. This was the biggest one as far as Stewart was concerned in 20 years. But there are some good points that people bring up, and if you happen to read through, you can see a lot more of that. But there's a whole lot more to talk about when it comes to the biggest upsets ever. And so we're going to get into it. And I think about years gone by with people like Billy Owens and Steve Nash. And I mean, you may not know that they've played a role in some of the biggest upsets ever. And so we're going to take a look here in just a second, because it's fun to think about, and fun to think about what it was like at that time. We're going to take a change here, go over to this different page. Let's see. All right. Going to, let's see. I'm going to pull up another page. This was from ESPN. And this was about a year ago, as they were discussing what were the biggest upsets in history. And you can see, if you take a look at this page, this was back in 2025. And you can see right there, St. Peter's on the cover. It's pretty cool when St. Peter's is on the cover. And it's certainly one you remember, but this is what they rank. If you take a look at the top upsets in March Madness history, again, this was done a year ago, but you know what? There were not any bigger upsets than these last year. So they're number one, FDU defeating Purdue back in 2023. I have to say I agree with this, because that was a huge upset. FDU didn't even win their conference tournament, and yet they came out and they defeated Purdue 63-58 in the first round. What a shock. I mean, think about that from a Purdue point of view, or any number one. When you're one of the favored teams to win the whole thing, and then you come out on Thursday or Friday afternoon and you lay an egg and your season is done. It's got to be just very difficult. FDU lost in the second round that year. But this is the other one that sometimes gets a mention, UMBC defeating Virginia. I mentioned that one earlier. The thing with this, though, is this was a better UMBC team than that FDU team. UMBC was a quality team. I mean, as a 16, as far as 16s go. And obviously that was a big, huge upset. You can see down here, it took 33 years for an upset of this magnitude, because they beat the top seeded Virginia. This was in 2018. And then it happened again, obviously, FDU doing it in 2023 against Purdue. But I think I would agree with that one. being Purdue, that loss being the number one, and then Virginia losing being the second biggest upset. I think those are probably right. And then you move on to the 15s, the 15 seeds that defeated the number twos. Princeton, they've had some fun years in the postseason in college basketball over the recent 30 years. And it's always special when it's Princeton, because number one, people don't expect it. Number two, they're usually not the best athletes because these are brainiacs. That's not why they're there. They're not there to, in general, they're not there to build an NBA career. That was what it was always like for me when I broadcast for the Army basketball team in the Patriot League. We would play Lehigh and Lafayette and Colgate and those kind of teams, Holy Cross. And so these players, while obviously some of them did have standout players at times, or even NBA players at times in the Patriot League. David Robinson with Navy comes to mind. But that's really generally not why they were there. So anytime you have a Princeton team defeating number 2 Arizona, that was a few years ago, that's huge. That's huge. And in fact, they won the next round also. They went to the Sweet 16, finally lost to Creighton, who was number 6. But Princeton, I think that's a good choice for number 3. And then St. Peter's, this is the one we saw up here on the picture. St. Peter's defeating Kentucky back in 2022. St. Peter's the 15, Kentucky the number 2. They went on to the Elite 8, finally losing to North Carolina. But just a fantastic run back in 2022 by St. Peter's. And I remember the country was gripped by that one. That was exciting. People were into it. That was the story. And that's usually what you see. You usually see 1 or 2 teams garner the attention of the country during the tournament. And so you're always curious to see what's going to happen as the new tournament begins. Ohio State, they were number 2 back in 2021, defeated by Oral Roberts. That was a big one. Oral Roberts, again, they went to the Sweet 16 before they got beat by Arkansas. That was a big one. Middle Tennessee State lost to Michigan State way back in 2016. Middle Tennessee lost to the Syracuse Orangemen in the second round. So they beat Michigan State, but then they were beaten by Syracuse. We're going to read about Syracuse in another minute here as we get down this list. 2013, that was when Georgetown got beat by Florida Gulf Coast. Probably not a team you think of a lot when you think of March Madness. They also got to the Sweet 16, but then they got beaten by their interstate rival, the Florida Gators. Back in 2012, Norfolk State shocked Missouri. And if you can take a look, Kyle O'Quinn, 26 points. That in that tournament helped him get drafted 49th overall, played 8 seasons in the NBA. So sometimes it's fun. You see a player do something big in a tournament, and in this case, regarding an upset, and it can help catapult them to an NBA career. Lehigh, I was talking about the Patriot League. In 2012, they defeated Duke. One of the years I was with Army basketball, I think it was 99, we played Lehigh twice and Duke once. And that's just a little tidbit, little fact for you. But in this case, CJ McCollum was the big star for Lehigh. He was picked 10th overall in that NBA draft that year after they beat Duke in 2012. Hampton over Iowa State, 2001. Hampton lost in the next round to Georgetown, but that was another big 15. See, there are a lot of 15s that defeat number 2s. 15 and 2, obviously historically, which you would think statistically, it happens more than a 16 defeating a 1. So that makes some sense. Coppin State in 1997 beat South Carolina. That was a big one. Santa Clara, now this is interesting. In 1993, that Arizona team was stacked. 7 future NBA players on that Arizona team. But Santa Clara had Steve Nash. He was a freshman, came off the bench, and played a big role in Santa Clara defeating Arizona that year. Regarding Syracuse, I mentioned them up top there. 1991, they had an awesome player named Billy Owens. He had 22 points in this game, but Richmond beat Syracuse. And that was big. That was 1991. So Syracuse is there. And if you scroll back up there, let's see. I mentioned Billy Owens up there because it stuck in my mind that he was going to be down here in this list as well. So that was a number 15 defeating a number 2 way back in 1991. So maybe you have one that in your list is higher than one of these. This is what they said. This is what their list was. And, you know, you may have a different list. I'd be curious to see what you think as far as some of the biggest upsets in March Madness history. Leave a comment. Let me know what your biggest upset is, what you're expecting to see, and maybe some of the memories you have of NCAA basketball in March. It's a fun time of year. I've always thought it's a really exciting month because you have the culmination of the college basketball season and the beginning of the baseball season, which for me, that's always been the highlight of the sporting year. But when you have the same on the same month, sometimes the same week, sometimes the same day or two, that's always exciting. So it's a fun time of year. And I just wanted to spend this little video to go quickly through some of the biggest March Madness upsets. Let me know what you think. If you have any to add. Again, my name is Rick. Make sure you subscribe. And until next time, so long.